Oh, come in, come away in. Ah, well, this is remarkable. You've exercised your unerring skill in finding me in out-of-the-way places when I'm on my road, but you couldn't be in a nicer out-of-the-way place than this. This is the wonderful, utterly book-lined study of my friend, the artist Mark Shields, who you may remember I mentioned because he gave me that fabulous book about the Glastonbury Thorn. So we're here with a couple of mates of his as well, Steve and Stuart, and all pipe smokers, so that's been a pleasure. And in fact, Steve has given me this this wonderful, I've never had this before, it's the most theologically specific tobacco I've ever smoked. It's called Presbyterian. Though actually, it's kind of richer and spicier than you might expect a Presbyterian to be, but there you go. And Stuart has given me a wonderful pipe tool here with a kind of stag's antler. Absolutely amazing. I shall have to be using that when I'm ever reading my poetry about the White Hart. So, here we are. Now, why am I here? A question I often ask myself. And the answer in this case is I'm here in Northern Ireland for a conference in Belfast about C.S. Lewis. And the truth of the matter is that I've got to give my talk tomorrow and whisper it, but it's not entirely in place. But I know it's on the theme of transformation. And I know that there's a great passage of wonderful transformation, in a sense, from, you might think, well, it's from life to death to life. And it's both in our world and in Aslan's country. And there's so much in it. I think I'm going to reflect on it tomorrow, but I thought it might be fun to read it to you. So, it's the passage at the end of The Silver Chair. Now, you remember Jill and Eustace go off and have all their adventures, but they start the book in Aslan's country, and then they're blown, as it were, on the breath of the wind of his spirit down into the world of Narnia to have the adventures. And while they're having their adventures, it's quite distressing for them to get there, because the man they'd known as young Prince Caspian, by the time they get back to Narnia, is an old King Caspian, and he's kind of quite doddery, and that's really weird to see, you know, who person who was your young friend so aged. But anyway, they go off and have the adventures successfully, and they come back and they realise that Caspian has died, and they're only in time for the funeral. And then something remarkable happens, which I remember being deeply moved, though I knew not quite why I moved by it as a child. You must imagine me as a child of 8 or 9 reading this. But of course I've kept reading it ever since, and now I'm a man who's been to many funerals, and even a man as a priest and pastor who's taken many funerals, as indeed these two gentlemen here have as well. And I find my understanding of what I'm doing, and especially of the funeral music and the kind of art of the funeral, deeply enhanced by this passage. So they've got back, they see the banner being lowered to half-mast on the castle. They see the people gathering around. The king has just died, his head is down on his pillow, and she hears a rustling and flapping, and then Lewis says this, and after that, slowly, mercilessly, with wailing strings and a disconsolate blowing of horns, the music began again, this time a tune to break your heart. They both slipped off their centaurs, who took no notice of them. I wish I was at home, said Jill. Eustace nodded, saying nothing, and bit his lip. I have come, said a deep voice behind them. They turned and saw the lion himself, so bright and real and strong that everything else began at once to look pale and shadowy compared with him. And in less time than it takes to breathe, Jill forgot about the dead king of Narnia and remembered only how she had made Eustace fall over the cliff, and how she'd helped to muff nearly all the signs, and about all the snappings and quarrellings. And she wanted to say, I am sorry, but she could not speak. Then the lion drew them towards him with his eyes, and bent down and touched their pale faces with his tongue, and said, think of that no more. I will not always be scolding. You have done the work for which I sent you to Narnia. It's a wonderful version of well done, thou good and trusty servant. Please, Aslan, said Jill, may we go home now? Yes, I have come to bring you home, capital H, said Aslan. Then he opened his mouth wide and blew. But this time they had no sense of flying through the air. Instead it seemed that they remained still, and the wild breath of Aslan blew away the ship, and the dead king, and the castle, and the snow, and the winter sky, for all these things floated off into the air like wreaths of smoke. I should still be smoking for that one. Like wreaths of smoke. And suddenly they were standing in a great brightness of midsummer sunshine, on smooth turf among mighty trees, and beside a fair fresh stream. They saw that they were once more on the mountain of Aslan, high above and beyond the end of that world in which Narnia lies. But the strange thing was that the funeral music for King Caspian still went on, though no one could tell where it came from. They were walking beside the stream, and the lion went before them, and he became so beautiful, and the music so despairing, that Jill did not know which of them it was that filled her eyes with tears. I couldn't begin to tell you how much that has meant to me as I've grown up into the sorrows of life. That beauty and despair, the beauty and the sorrow going together and not knowing which of them it is, and the beauty not being destroyed by the despair. Then Aslan stopped, and the children looked into the stream, and there, on the golden gravel of the bed of the stream, lay King Caspian, dead, with the water flowing over him like liquid glass. His long white beard swayed in it like waterweed, and all three stood and wept. Even the lion wept, great lion tears, each tear more precious than the earth would be if it were a single solid diamond. And Jill noticed that Eustace looked neither like a child crying nor like a boy crying and wanting to hide it, but like a grown-up crying. At least that's the nearest she could get to it. But really, as she said, people don't seem to have any particular age in that mountain. And I mean, just so much, that tears are okay. That's a good thing for a boy of 8 to be told, that you could be a man and shed tears. But of course, the heart of it is Aslan weeping. And it was only, years later when I got to that passage in John 11, is it? The shortest sentence in the Gospels. Jesus wept. Jesus knows he's going to raise Lazarus, but he cries. The idea that the God who is immortal participates in the sorrow that we feel. And that the sorrow we feel, the grief, is right. It's the proper response. We shouldn't hide it. And then comes this extraordinary passage. Son of Adam, said Aslan, go into that thicket and pluck the thorn that you will find there and bring it to me. Eustace obeyed. The thorn was a foot long and sharp as a rapier. Drive it into my paw, son of Adam, said Aslan, holding up his right forepaw and spreading out the great pad towards Eustace. Must I? Said Eustace. Yes, said Aslan. Then Eustace set his teeth and drove the thorn into the lion's pad, and there came out a great drop of blood, redder than all the redness that you have ever seen or imagined, and it splashed into the stream over the dead body of the king. At the same moment, the doleful music stopped, and the dead king began to be changed. His white beard turned to grey, and from grey to yellow, and got shorter and vanished altogether, and his sunken cheeks grew round and fresh, and the wrinkles were smooth, and his eyes opened, and his eyes and lips both laughed, and suddenly he leapt up and stood before them, a very young man, or a boy, but Jill couldn't say which, because of people having no particular ages in Aslan's country. Even in this world, of course, it's the stupidest children who are the most childish, and the stupidest grown-ups who are most grown up. And he rushed to Aslan and flung his arms as far as they would go round the huge neck, and he gave Aslan the strong kisses of a king, and Aslan gave him the wild kisses of a lion. At last Caspian turned to the others. He gave a great laugh of astonished joy. Why, Eustace, he said, Eustace, so you did reach the end of the world after all. And, I suppose, you can have any kind of happy ever after story in which, you know, you die and you rise and you're your best self again and you're transformed. And we get a bit of a glimpse of that in the last battle. But this is the bit where he shows us not only that Aslan wept, but what it costs him to make the transformation. And, you know, there are phrases in scripture that I found frankly repugnant when I first crossed them, like, they have washed their robes in the blood of the lamb. You know, it's just, but the image of the lion who chooses to suffer the pain and a drop of whose blood transforms and restores, you know, that speaks more than you know, any amount of abstract theology is ever going to do for me. It gives me a picture to think with. And then the last bit of this is great. So Caspian goes to embrace them, and Eustace, who's always the person carrying the doubts of one kind or another, or the difficulties, Eustace made a step towards him with both hands held out, but then drew back with a somewhat startled expression. "Look here, I say," he stammered, it's all very well, but aren't you, I mean, didn't you..." "Oh, don't be such an ass," said Caspian. "But," said Eustace, looking at Aslan, "hasn't he, it's like it's too impolite to, hasn't he, died?" "Well, yes," said the lion in a very quiet voice, almost Jill thought as if he were laughing. "He has died. Most people have, you know. Even I have. There are very few who haven't." "Oh," said Caspian, "I see what's bothering you. You think I'm a ghost or some nonsense. But don't you see, I would be that if I appeared in Narnia now, because I don't belong there anymore. But one can't be a ghost in one's own country." There's a saying to say, one can't be a ghost in one's own country. I might be a ghost if I got into your world, I don't know. But I suppose it isn't yours either now. Now you're here. A great hope rose in the children's hearts. But Aslan shook his shaggy head. "No, my dears," he said, "when you meet me here again, you will have come to stay. But not now. You must go back to your own world for a while." It took me several readings of as a boy to grasp that the great, having been afraid of the great hope was that they might be dead, that this might be the beginning of heaven, you know, the first chapter. And again, how could the same couple of pages tell me that it was okay to grieve with all my heart for death, and also tell me that my death might be my great hope? Astonishing. And all for children. So anyway, I'm going to try and say something like that, or some aspect of that, in this plenary tomorrow. Thank you for coming round and helping me to rehearse it. Anyway, Sláinte, good to see you.